Hello, this is a meeting of the Auburn School Committee, May 13th. I would like to call the meeting to order. We'll start by doing an attendance as we continue to work remotely here. Dr. McCrillis is not with us yet. Hopefully will join. Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Yes. Mrs. Holloway?
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington?
Yes.
Mr. Scobie, yes. Dr. Brunel?
Yes.
Dr. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Worsbicky?
Yes.
Mrs. Zotner?
Yes.
And Mrs. McCrillis?
Yes.
Is there anyone whose name I didn't call that's joining us for the meeting, clothed or otherwise? All right. With that being said, there'll be no citizens to comment or any other acts. I'd seek approval of the minutes of April 22 and April 27.
Scott Kaufman, I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Mike McCrillis with a second. Roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway?
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington?
Yes.
And Mr. Scobie, yes, it is a vote. And we now move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks everyone for being here. Started much smoother than last time. So wanted to, as we annually do at this time of year, recommend your appointment of both the Civil Rights Coordinator and the Title IX Coordinator. My recommendation being the same individual, Dr. Chamberlain, who has graciously agreed to serve in this capacity again. And as I'm doing with all decisions that are particularly impactful for next year, Superintendent-elect Hanfield is in agreement with this as well.
I would entertain that motion.
I will make that motion. Jesse Harrington.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Gail
Scott
Holloway.
Kaufman, second.
Second.
All right, we have a few seconds there. Elaine, I'll let you sort that out. Any comments or questions?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you again for
Yes,
doing
thanks
that.
for stepping up once again.
Happy to do
Okay. Roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway?
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington?
Yes.
And Mr. Scobie, yes, it is a vote. Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda, we looked at the school committee meeting dates for the remainder of this school year included in your packets. And we would be doing them every 2 weeks. But for the one, rather than 2 weeks from today, we'll hold it 2 weeks from yesterday. And that's because the town elections will be on May 19th. And we need to hold a reorganization meeting within 7 days. So that'll be on Tuesday the 26th. And then for June meetings, we have the 2nd just prior to town meeting, and I'll update you a little bit on that later. And then the 10th and 24th, all at 2 o'clock. So I will need you to vote on those, but also on the reverse side of that sheet are the proposed meeting dates for next school year. And as per your request, we've added in meetings every 2 weeks throughout the summer in case issues come up. And I agree, I think that's a really wise thing for you to do. You can always cancel them if you don't need them.
Yep, sounds good. I would entertain that motion.
Make a motion to proceed with the meetings as scheduled.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Gail.
All right. Any comments, questions? Roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway?
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington?
Yes.
And Mr. Scobie, yes, it is a vote. Thank you.
The next item, just wanted to give you an update on the school the closure of the school field. So my understanding was that even last weekend there were a number of people down on there. So as noted in the memo, I did have a conversation a week ago Monday with Town Manager Jacobson and Chief Slucas. And Chief did confirm that if anyone is to call about individuals being down there, they will send someone down to address that. I have been checking intermittently this week, and I have not heard of problems. We did additionally, with Mr. Fahey, put some sawhorses and noted that the fields are closed. And I do just want, for you to know, I think you know already, that we had locked all of the gates. We actually had to have some repairs made to the fence because people were jumping the fence, so much. But I'm hopeful that this issue has been resolved. I had relayed to Mr. Scobie, Chairperson Scobie, about Mr. Fahey and I, probably, I think it was on the Thursday, somewhere April 30th, I think it may even have been that day. We went over to the high school. We were going for another reason to check some things and noticed an individual on the field who was working out on the track with a very heavy, one of those medicine balls that you toss around for strength and training, I guess. So, and there were two young males that were playing ball on the field. So we stopped and asked the two young males to leave. They acted surprised and that they didn't know the fields were closed. And I said, well, the only way you got onto the field was by jumping the fence. And there were signs posted. Turns out they were very respectful. They were not from Auburn. We suggested other fields they could go to, and they weren't familiar with Lemansky or Pappas. The other man that we spoke with was not going to leave and just insisted that no, and we couldn't make him leave. So I did end up calling the chief, and he came down and spoke with him, and he left readily. But hopefully people, we did post it on Auburn Mass Daily. We sent it to the Auburn News as well, but hopefully people are adhering to that decision better now.
Through
Excellent.
the chair, I actually have a question, if I may.
Go ahead, Doug.
So are we locking the tennis courts? I asked because at the very high fence, and on Sunday, driving by on Mother's Day, there was a guy playing on the tennis court. So I'm not sure if he cracked through the lock or if he jumped that. I think it's like a 12-foot fence. So
Through the
do you know
chair,
if those are still supposed to be off limits, or is it just the field?
so through the chair, my understanding was all of the fields and even the courts and things too. So way back, at least a month ago, maybe longer, the town and school department had removed the nets from the tennis courts and even the basketball ones. So everything should be locked. I will certainly double check that, but my understanding when you made that decision was for fields and courts, all areas there. But
Yeah, that's,
Okay, great. Thank you.
that's correct. And I believe the courts are still open, and what they're doing is making their own nets out of caution tape or something.
Okay.
Well, and they still have the backboard, so if you want to hit on your
Right.
own,
Right.
Yeah.
and I think we've always said that, but I just get a little worried because the fence is so tall. So I don't think we want to see anyone with cracked skulls because they're trying to do something they're really not supposed to be doing. So
Absolutely. Thank you.
Except maybe the guy with the medicine ball, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, I had checked around the fields all this week, and since they've closed the parking lots, I haven't seen anybody on the courts of any of the tennis courts or any of the courts.
Great.
And it seemed to be working pretty good.
Good.
Well, that's good. I just want the town, the residents to understand, once again, we don't take this lightly, but we do take the health of all the residents, and especially our children. We do take that pretty seriously, as well as the upkeep and the maintenance of the equipment in the fields. I mean, that's an investment from the residents that we've been charged with looking after. So, there's a lot that goes into the decision. I just want them to know that it's not a punishment at all to the residents, but rather trying to do what's right as far as safety goes, and as far as wear and tear on our fields and equipment that those very residents have paid for.
Right, and as someone had said, they were damaging the fence by jumping over it, and it now needs to be repaired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's an expense.
Right.
That's an expense at a time where, our budget's tight and it's just not fair
Yeah.
to the kids.
We all need to be a little bit flexible right now. Thank you for that, Dr. Brunel.
Sure. So the next item regarding payment of hourly wages from revolving accounts. We are good with monies in those accounts. There have been some individuals who have elected to stop being paid because they cannot participate in any work that we've been able to assign to them. So it is my recommendation, should you wish to do so, that you could pay them through the end of this year. However, I would really caution you, none of us knows what school the fall will be in terms of students returning to school. But I think if this goes on long term, and it will be Mr. Hanfield's recommendation to make, that you're not going to be able to continue to pay these individuals for work that they're not completing. And you've probably read about that in other communities. So, but I understand your desire to continue to do so this school year.
Thank you. I would entertain that motion.
I'll make a motion to continue to pay the staff of the before and after school programs for their weekly hours through June 12th.
I'll second that.
Any discussion, comments, questions?
I heard from a few people, and I am in complete agreement to continue to pay them. But people are saying, well, if we're going to be charging more next year, and how do they have all this extra money? This is coming because we're not using any equipment and stuff, and not having to purchase goods for the after school program, right?
Correct.
Pretty much.
Yes,
Yeah,
for all those reasons, correct. Yep.
that's what I figured.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway,
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington,
Yes.
and Mr. Scobie, yes. It is a vote. Thank you.
So the next item, we wanted to share with you and hopefully seek your vote of support. So we drafted a letter. This was something that was brought forward by Mrs. Worsbicky and Mrs. Reed.
I can learn to understand you much better if I can get familiar with the way you talk. I need your permission to.
Not exactly sure what that was all about, but
I think that was Siri or Alexa or somebody.
it may have been. So not as exciting a visitor as we had.
I thought it was.
I'll keep your fingers crossed.
Yes. So this letter, as you've noted in the packet, was sent to Commissioner Riley in communities across the Commonwealth for sending it. So we understand that we are paying our collaboratives, even though our students are not attending those programs, because they are continuing with remote learning. Similarly, with our private out-of-school district placements, those individuals are in organizations are continuing to provide remote learning. This letter really asks for the commissioner to give consideration to reducing the rate that we would pay basically for April, May, and June, because there are expenses that they, like us, are not experiencing. So, staff training, staff mileage, meals, client transportation, all of those that were listed there. So whether this gets the support of the commissioner, all we're asking for is that he review and give consideration to potentially reducing those rates. So it would be great to have your support behind that letter.
I would entertain that motion.
I would make that motion that we vote in support of the letter seeking the commissioner's review of out-of-district tuition costs and adjusting them to reflect the changing circumstances of this extended school closure.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second.
Any discussion?
Seems like the reasonable thing to do.
Absolutely. Yes.
Great.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah, through the chair, I think it's fair. I mean, for no other reason, transportation. Nobody's going anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Dr. McCrillis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway,
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington,
Yes.
and Mr. Scobie, yes. It is a vote.
Great, thank you. And then just wanted to make you aware, I did send you an email Monday evening, presented the warrant articles to the Board of Selectmen. They were unanimously supported. and we'll do so the same at 7 to the Finance Committee. So I will update you on that, but I expect hopefully the same result.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we now move on to unfinished business.
So with Commissioner Riley's final guidance regarding school days and the fact that Auburn students and teachers continued remote learning during the 4 days of the April break, not the Patriots' Day holiday, we have to have students go to their 181st day, which is Friday, June 12th. That is different than what I had shared with you previously, but his guidance appears final at this point. And then also for teachers, their contract says they can go no more than 185 days. Therefore, their final day of school would be Monday, June 15th. So I ask for your vote of support on both of those, and that way we will notify all families. We have a communication that's going to go out tomorrow, and then also staff so they're aware as well.
I'd entertain that motion.
I'll make a motion to approve Friday, June 12th as the students' last day of school and Monday, June 15th as the faculty's last day of school.
I'll
So
second that.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Through the chair, I actually just had one other question, and forgive me because I don't have a calendar in front of me. Did we have any remaining staff PD days that we were trying to fill? And if so, has there been any recommendations from the commissioner or Desi about what we do with that, or do we just, is it just a wash?
So that's a great question through the chair. If you remember, on March 13th, that Friday, we decided to ultimately not hold school. That was just before I had made the decision, as had other local superintendents, to close for 2 weeks, and then the governor came through. So technically, the staff owe for that day. Part of their contract, they work the day after school ends, which would be Monday, June 15th. Because students went to school this year for 181 days per the commissioner, and then 4 days that the teachers, 3 days that they've already fulfilled, the March 13th day basically disappeared because contractually they can only do 185. And we have talked to the AEA about that, and they are good with that.
Okay.
Great. No, I just wanted to make sure that either if it made sense that we kind of just negate any other ones that we needed to do,
Sure.
make it a wash, or
Yeah.
if people really felt like they wanted to do PED, that we could give them some sort of optional, I don't know, some sort of continuing ed, if that's what some of our staff felt like they needed. But it sounds like it's already squared away.
No, and through the
Thank you.
chair, they are, along with doing remote learning, they're doing a tremendous amount of professional development. Dr. Chamberlain sends out weekly notifications to them. So not only teachers, but staff across the district are participating in a variety of really good quality PD. So lots is taking place for sure.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you. That's all for me.
All right. Roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway,
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington,
Yes.
and Mr. Scobie. Yes, there's a vote. Thank you.
So the next item, actually a couple of them, 3 of them really are very closely related. So high school seniors' last day will be this Friday, May 15th. So included in your packet is a letter or correspondence that Mr. Hanfield sent to the graduating seniors and their families. As we all understand, the seniors are having a very different experience this year than they would have otherwise. But to Mr. Hanfield, Ms. Donahue, and their team's credit, the senior class advisors, the class officers are really working closely together. And the students have made it really clear that it is their desire to graduate at some point out of Auburn High on a Friday evening at 6:30, which are all the standard traditional things. So at this point, it has been tentatively set, or it has been set for July 31st, that it will take place. And what we don't know at this point are the specifics about it. So waiting for Governor Baker's updated guidance that is anticipated to come on Monday. Mr. Hanfield and Ms. Donahue will circle back with the aforementioned team and work together to plan something very appropriate for them. Also, this Friday, as noted in that memo, the seniors who wish to to commemorate their technically final day of their senior year, are going to participate in a parade. They're going to start at Horgan and ultimately loop down and through Auburn High School. And staff members, appropriately spaced so that they are adhering to all of the guidelines, will be there, and perhaps others to cheer them on. So we are excited for our graduates, and I'm sure you've heard lots of the different news stations and individuals talking about this, and some who say, you know, after 20 years, you may not remember the specifics of your graduation. I suspect our seniors this year will remember them due to their just a very unique, unforeseen, and uncontrolled, unable to control the experiences. So lots of plans in the works, but I would ask for your vote just to make it official as you set the calendar that this Friday, May 15th is the seniors' last day.
I would entertain that motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the class of 2020's last day of school being Friday, May 15th.
I'll second that.
Any discussion, comments? Oh, okay. I'm not sure what that means, but it sounds like he's in support. I just wish them all the best. Of course, we feel sorry for them, and I'm sure it's not going to hinder their success in life. But we do wish them the best, and I am sorry that things have gone this way. Roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway,
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington,
Yes.
and Mr. Scobie. Yes, it is a vote. Thank you.
And similarly, Mr. Desto and Mr. Carlson are working with their 8th grade team to plan something appropriate for the 8th grade students. So again, just as Mr. Hanfield does, they know that they are going to do something for them, absolutely. They are awaiting further guidance from the governor. And so as those plans continue to develop, as well as the high school graduation plans, we will keep you updated. And obviously, we're hopeful that you will be part of those as usual. And then also, just to make you aware, we're really trying to do everything we can to the degree possible to keep things as normal for students as possible. So step-up day plans are in the works. We're trying to at least introduce students to the grade level that they will be attending next year. So it varies by school, but perhaps putting together videos and some introductions. So all of that is in the works, and because we are quickly closing in on the end of the school year for students. So we'll have more information to share with you on that, but all of those plans are in the works.
Through the chair, how about teacher assignments for next year? Are kids going to hear about those early, or is it going to be over the summer?
So thank you, Dr. McCrillis. So through the chair, that has been something that we have been discussing, in-house. And we think at this point, just based on the unpredictability of the budget and waiting to hear what numbers are going to come out of the State House, that at least tentatively right now, based on a conversation last Friday, we think it's probably wise to not announce teacher names just yet, and to wait and do it a little bit later in the summer. And because I think the last thing that we want to do is to tell children they're going to be in this class and have them talk and get to know who else is going to be in that class, if any changes need to be made. So that's our plan at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we now move on to new business.
So wanted to share with you regarding FY21 that I just had mentioned there. And I'm sure, and I know I've sent some correspondence to you already, but there is great concern, I think it's fair to say, out there from legislators, from communities across the Commonwealth regarding what financial impact COVID-19 is going to have on funding and availability. And I think, quite honestly, at the State House, they truly don't know at this point. And it's going to depend, I think, at least partially, in terms of when things reopen. And I am in full support of things opening to the degree that it's done with safety first in mind. But until they get a better handle on what revenues they're going to be getting, you know, there's been discussions. I have another conference call with the Commissioner of Education tomorrow, whether the Student Opportunity Act, it seems more likely than not that those funds will not be able to be supported, at least to start in FY21. There is a strong commitment on the legislator's part to do so at some point, but that may need to be delayed. So there are definitely concerns. Dr. Chamberlain, Mr. Hanfield, Mrs. Worsbicky, and I have been in communication, as I shared with you previously, with Town Manager Jacobson and CFO Kazanovich. We've even been working with the leadership team on, you know, what could we cut if we get to a certain level. So all of those discussions have happened. We're not going to share anything specific until you've seen it and in support of it. But the good news is, as of right now today, we will be going forward with the recommended budget that you have unanimously supported at 2.75% increase. And that's what will go to town meeting. We do already know, and not to steal Dr. Chamberlain's thunder because she's going to talk about it, some grant money that's going to be coming through the states from the federal government to help try to ease some of the burdens that individuals know that schools are going to have, as will communities. But we're hopeful, you know, back in 2010, when I think it was called the American Revitalization Act, when we had gone through, for a different reason, a really difficult financial time, considerable monies came forward to schools. And my recollection was to the tune of like $800,000 or somewhere in that vicinity. And so there is something in your packet that I'm going to ask you to vote later. But right now, we actually had a call earlier today with members from the town's administration about holding the town meeting, because currently, although there has been legislation that's been filed to allow representative forms of government to hold remote town meeting, it has been stuck in, and I forget where, some committee on the House side. My understanding is the Senate passed it and the House has not yet. So it is going to need to be a meeting that will be held. We're working on the location, and tentatively, the goal, I think, really is to have it be outside, likely on the football field. So we're in discussions about how that could actually look, and actually going to be polling town meeting members, because obviously they need to get a quorum. There needs to be 80 individuals there. So we will update you, but, you know, just wanted to make you aware that I do think, similar to back in 2010, when there was grave concern about cuts, but for the fact that we got lots of money that came from the federal government, I do think FY21 is going to be a very challenging year.
I agree. Any comments, questions?
Yes, so through the chair, in the past, I've understood that there were restrictions for us carrying over some monies from one year to the next in some buckets. Do we know what it would take to get, I guess, a one-time waiver for that? And I forgive my ignorance here. I'm not sure if that has to come from the state, from the town, if it's part of the charter. I don't know what that would be, but it seems prudent that if and when we can run a little leaner in anticipation of knowing that we might really have some significant challenges next year. Do we know what I guess the question is, do we know what the process would be to get permission to do that?
So through the chair, it's a great question, and it's actually been something that a number of us superintendents have talked to, a number of superintendents have talked with the commissioner about, and to try and get some legislative relief, because right now the fiscal year ends on June 30th. So at that time, any monies that remain go to the bottom line or of the town's budget, the free cash, actually. So in order for that to change, my understanding is it would take legislative action, so it really isn't anything that can happen locally. What I will say, however, though, is as a school district, we are trying to be very strategic in our spending of money, and in any way, you know, in what we've shared with CFO Kazanovich and Town Manager Jacobson is that any monies, any savings that we are realizing, we are certainly going to be putting a large portion of those into the Special Ed Stabilization Fund. That way giving a little bit of cushion that should some needs, and I think it, is possible. This has not been an easy time social emotionally for some kids who are struggling anyway to be home with remote learning. So there could be an uptick in needs there. And also just trying to make sure that our revolving accounts, that we have, the money in those should some needs come up. So we're trying to be really strategic in how we do that. But to answer your question, Dot, it would take legislative action, but it is out there and has been proposed and advocated for, because unlike regional school districts that can carry over any money that they have and goes into what is called an E&D account, their excess and deficiency account, districts such as ours, it goes back to the municipal government. So it is being worked on.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess a follow-up question would just be regarding CIP funding, which I know is ultimately from the town, but if we think we might see cuts, are we already kind of scrutinizing what we really have to have 2, 3, 4 years down the line, as opposed to and maybe reprioritizing some of those things?
Absolutely. Through the chair. So the CIP, we're really looking closely at that. And even if approved by town meeting, we'll still be, in others after me, will still be making decisions on, even though it's been approved, whether or not we want them to borrow it at this time. So unless things are absolutely mandatory to be done now, we may look to ask them to borrow it a little bit later, just to ease some of the burden on the town, for sure.
Great questions, Doc.
Great, thank you.
Any others? Seeing none.
So with regard to this, so we have looked at anticipated numbers for next year, and as noted in the packet, we had 49 students accepted to Bay Path. We have 8 who have been accepted, 8th graders, 8 who have been accepted to private school placements, and basically really has us with a relatively small, in comparison, grade 9 class, next year grade 9 class of about 160 students. And that even left some wiggle room, because not everyone accepted to private school may go, particularly I think if families may be struggling a bit, and even Bay Path, some students choose maybe not to do that. But in speaking with Mr. Hanfield, we are recommending that you approve an addition of 15 school choice slots at the high school only, not to do so at the middle school. And also just to, make you aware the impact of the reserve at Ashworth Hill, and I am seeking an update and hope to have one for you at the next meeting. That isn't expected to be built out until 2023. So I'm very comfortable with this recommendation of adding 15 slots, which would give some flexibility financially to us.
I would entertain that motion.
I'll make that motion that we approve the addition of 15 school choice slots at Auburn High School.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, so Mary Ellen, what happens down the road with siblings of these students? Are we required to bring them on board eventually?
So the way that the law reads is siblings should get preference. What school committee has done, and I can bring that policy back, is the stance from school committee has been that once a child is accepted, his or her siblings are automatically brought in rather than having them attend different school districts. So you could certainly look at that. In Elaine, I can get that information and bring it back to you at the next meeting. I would say of the ones that we accepted, this year, each year I would say there are about 2 or 3 who have siblings, who come, and it varies. But they couldn't come through the chair until they got to 6th grade, because you don't allow school choice at elementary, and I don't recommend it either. But yes, right now they could.
Yeah, so I would probably want to look at that policy, because if they have younger siblings, that could impact things down the road with Ashworth, with the development going up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's my
And
only
through the chair-
hesitation. Oh, sorry, Dot.
No, go ahead, and then go ahead, finish.
I think that's my only hesitation, unless we could okay the 15 students and then later on decide on the sibling policy.
Through the chair, you could do that, because all we would be accepting right now would be the actual school choice students. And I believe, just because the way the school choice numbers fell this year, we were only able to accept a very small number up at the high school. So we had, I think, there were 19 freshmen for applications that were not brought in. And then for the other grades, I'm going to guess about another 10. So we have 30 applications on the books that we had already sent denial letters to. So I know that we would be making 15 families quite happy if this was approved.
Through the chair, so, but should we update the policy now so that those families are aware that there's a potential that the sibling may not be able to come to Auburn? I can see that changing a family's mind, but I think it's something that they should know.
So through the chair, I think that's a great point. If we're going to accept the 15, what I might offer for your consideration is, because Mrs. Zotner actually makes personal phone calls to those families who are, once they're selected, is she could let them know, to make them aware at that time, that the school choice policy was going to be reviewed at the next meeting and may very well, because the law, and I haven't read it honestly in a year or two, but what it always stated was that they were to be given preference. It did not require. This Auburn's policy does, but that it would be under reconsideration and that they may not be automatically accepted.
Great, thank you.
Good questions. Yeah, I think when we update that policy, we could put a certain number on there, because of course I think all of us would like for their siblings to be able to come here if it's feasible. And if we have the space. So we may just have to put an exact number on that, and let the parents know after the fact what that number is. But yeah, those are good points. We certainly don't want to be overrun should we get another development in town for the next couple of years. I don't think that development is going to immediately impact the high school, but you know, who can say? I think it's a good point and definitely worth looking into.
And then through the chair, I just had one question about really just the real estate turnover. Do we have some general metrics for how many kids we see moving into district specifically for high school? I would imagine that's already been accounted for, but.
Yeah, so through the chair, it really varies year to year, and Dr. Chamberlain can probably attest to this. So I don't remember if it was last summer or the summer before, Swanson Road seemed to be the hotspot where a lot of kids, you know, registered there. Right. So it really varies. It depends on the families that move in. It's been, you know, last year, I know Dr. Chamberlain and I, we talked about it with the primary configuration team, that, you know, we monitor the numbers throughout the summer. And then all of a sudden, I mean, Dr. Chamberlain shares, you know, she even thought maybe it was incorrect data, that like the Bryn Mawr number for one of the had gone up like by 10 children, you know, literally over a weekend and things. So I don't know that there's any way to track it accurately, except the only thing I would say, and it depends on family circumstances, and this is just anecdotal information. Oftentimes, if children have been in a community for many years, they're a little bit more resistant to their parents about wanting to move to a new community, which may or may not come into play, whereas younger children seem a little bit more perhaps relaxed about it. But that can't always be the reason for families either.
We may, with all that's going on, we may see some fluctuation in those numbers as well, with the unfortunate possibility of people losing their residency. but something certainly to keep an eye on. Any further questions or comments? Okay, roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway,
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington,
Yes.
and Mr. Scobie. Yes, it is a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. So in your packet, I alluded to this earlier, a resolution for full disclosure, the Boston School Committee actually put this together and we modified it to fit our needs. And it really goes very much in line with seeking some relief federally and statewide for the needs that we anticipate that we are going to have. So it is my hope that you will vote in support of this. And it really just brings to the fore, you know, the challenges with which we are dealing and likely will continue to deal for at least the upcoming year and perhaps longer. So with your approval and vote, this would get sent off to our U.S. Senators and House of Representatives for their consideration.
I would entertain that motion.
I'll make that motion to approve the resolution from the Auburn School Committee and send to our state and federal legislators to seek their support of additional funding for education.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway,
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington,
Yes.
and Mr. Scobie. Yes, it is a vote. Thank you.
So, Mr.
And we
Chair,
now move,
actually,
and we now-
sorry, if before we go on to new business, if I could just, on to teaching and learning, if I could add one item under new business.
sure.
So with my apologies for not putting this on there, we have been outreached by a couple of parents wondering if a portion of the bus fee that they paid for this school year would be reimbursed to them, since we are not transporting kids to and from school. So I will tell you that we are paying not the full amount of the transportation contract, but about 75 or 80% of it, and that was required in order to adhere to the contract. But I did want to bring it forward to you for your consideration to determine, because it is the school committee who set the rate. We've already set the rate for $100 for next year, but if there was to be consideration about any reimbursement, we calculated it would be for about a quarter of the year, so it would be $25.
Okay, so we did speak, I did speak briefly with Dr. Brunel about this issue yesterday. So my thoughts were that based on all that's going on, you know, all the uncertainty that some families are going through, if they need that $25 back, I would say that I think we were both in agreement that it may be a good idea, as much of a hassle as it could be to write out the checks to those families, sort of backtrack and getting those checks out. I think it might be a good idea. My other thought on that was there were some families like my own that probably wouldn't go through the hassle of filling out the paperwork to get the $25 back. For two reasons. You know, the hassle of filling out the paperwork, making the phone call, whatever the procedure may be. And number two, I think the district at this point in time not only could use that extra money toward our budget, but we also, I don't think, want to bog down our business office staff with, what is the number, Dr. Brunel? 1,000 bus riders?
It's about 1,400 bus riders.
1,400.
Mhm.
With them automatically giving 1,400 refunds to people who may choose or not to choose to donate that money or keep it right in the district where it's going to do their children and other children some good. So those were were my thoughts and Dr. Brunel's input as well. So I would open that up to any discussion.
I think,
Through the chair, would it be viable to offer an option for prorating next year? Not, and I would say not at the exclusion. I agree if someone really needs that extra money back. Obviously, I agree, George. I think to give it back, but if it would alleviate at least some of, or reduce some of the transactions that come over to Cecilia's office that prorating next year as another option, I mean, would that be help or would it be harder? I don't know.
No, it's a great point. So through the chair, and Mrs. Worsbicky is going to report on exactly how many applications we've accepted so far. So I'm going to use a rough number of 500. I think it's more like 550. So we've accepted $100 checks. I take that back. I don't know that everyone was a paying person, but we have about 550 applications in hand. So I think what if the committee chooses to go this route, we would outreach those individuals, and they would be potentially either do a $25 refund, or they could choose to say, you can leave it with the district. For those individuals, the 850 or so who have not yet paid, what we could do is to say to them that rather than paying the $100 that you owe for next year, you could instead only owe $75. So we could get that information. And what we'd have to do on our end is to make sure that they did in fact pay it last year, and we have all of those records. So that might be the way to go through it, which would not then require us to potentially distribute 1,400 checks, but probably potentially up to 500 or so checks, unless people chose to donate the money to the district, as Mr. Scobie said.
Any other comments?
I like that extra option of being able to just apply it to next year instead, or donate the money or get it back. That way they have three choices.
Yep.
I think that sounds good.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Dr. Brunel?
So I just, maybe in the form of a motion to set the rate actually, or to vote to return $25 of the, up to $25, and for those, with those three different options being available to families. Since the school committee set the rate of 100, I think you need to revise it. So if someone
Anyone up
says,
for that challenge?
yeah, if someone wants to say the motion that Dr. Brunel said, I will work with Mrs. Ottner to make sure that it accurately reflects.
And I make the motion as presented by the superintendent.
And I
Do I have
second
a
this.
second? All right. Any further discussion?
I have a question through the chair. So will this go out in a one call, or how would you, oh, you would attach it to your one call?
Yes, so what we're thinking is we have a couple of notifications to go out tomorrow. There's a letter from the commissioner I want to share. There's a district wellness challenge that we're going to share, and I also want to announce about the last day of school. So I would put it in that notification as well once we can craft it. Or actually, as I'm thinking out loud, I may wait and do it on Monday as its own standalone email.
I
If
agree.
they come too long, they get bogged down, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Changed my
Excellent.
mind right out loud.
Sounds good.
You have
So
the right to do so.
I guess my only concern is if we do give people the $25 discount for next year, are we going to be scrambling next year to catch up for, I don't know. It makes me nervous. I'm not
Well,
sure.
in through the chair, you know, so they'd still be paying the $100 for next year. They'd be getting a rebate for here, but it is going to put pressure on the revolving account because we use $100,000 as an offset to the budget from this. So, you know, in that regard too, we would continue to work with Mrs. Worsbicky. And if there is any way to preserve the money that's in there, because that $100,000 we have committed to use next year. So it has to be there. So we would work to make sure that it was there.
Yeah, I I don't like it,
Mhm.
but I don't know.
Mm.
Any other
Because
comments?
we don't know what next year is going to bring. So to already be cutting our funding or our profits or whatever, I don't know, it just makes me uneasy, but.
Mm.
I will go
So
with the
through the
little-
chair, at this point, if people are tight, they might not be opting to actually take the bus next year at all anyway. So you don't really know at all.
And some parents may decide not to do the bus in the fall because of
Mhm.
Right.
virus as well.
True.
Good points. Any other comments? Well, I guess we'll put it to a vote then. Roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis,
Yes.
Ms. Kaufman,
Yes.
Ms. Soloway,
Yes.
Ms. Harrington,
I'm gonna have to say no, because I don't feel like I just have an uneasy feeling, so I'm gonna have to say no.
and you have that right. Okay, and Mr. Scobie, yes. And that is a vote. Thank you.
And there is one final item under new business. So we received, I should say the food service program received a donation. I believe Mrs. Zotner sent you an updated agenda. So it is my recommendation. I believe the amount was $3,435. I'm looking in my email now to find that that she received for the through the food service program. I don't know if Mrs. Worsbicky, if you know what that value is.
Sorry about that, I had it muted. Yes, the amount that we've received was $3,245, and it was from the EOS Foundation for serving meals in our community for children in our school district during the COVID-19 school closures. So we were just looking for an acceptance because it was a grant and it's supposed to help with the expenses that were while we provide these services to our students during the closure period.
Okay. Are we looking for a motion on that, Dr. Brunel?
We would look for a motion, yes, for you to accept that donation, please.
I would entertain that motion.
I will make the motion to accept the donation presented by the business manager. Good.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Just thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway,
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington,
Yes.
and Mr. Scobie, yes. It is a vote. Thank you.
And that is all I had now.
All right, and on to teaching and learning. Dr. Chamberlain?
Hey everyone, nice to see you all. So last we spoke, the commissioner had just come out with the new guidelines on the remote learning plans for schools. So we've had a couple of weeks to begin our work on them. I think we were all pleased to see that the commissioner continues to place heavy emphasis on prioritizing relationships and maintaining connections with students. So that was very positive things for us. Of course, the addition of what he referred to as some power standards, critical standards to prepare students for next school year were a part of that, and to encourage opportunities for enrichment, exercise, and play. Much of what he had asked to happen, we were already doing with reaching out to families, making sure that we connected with each family to keep track of any students who we knew might be at risk or perhaps not having the resources that they needed to learn in this environment. Students with social and emotional challenges, to make sure that they had access to our guidance counselors or to their classroom teachers. Much of that we were already doing. What has happened since this new guidance came out was that we are providing additional either recorded or live lessons being offered to teachers to varying degrees at each grade level. Every grade level isn't going to be the same, but those have increased. We are focusing on the power standards. Teachers took time to go back to see what had already been taught during the course of the school year, which some of it had, and what continued additional emphasis as we moved forward in these closing weeks of the school year. We've expanded small group offerings, both academic and social emotional. So kids are still having their small group lunch bunches if they need them, or group counseling at the upper levels, along with small group instruction for students who needed that kind of intervention for certain academic areas. Dr. Brunel will share some opportunities that our wellness department just put forward to get kids moving, but all of our specialists continue to offer ways for kids to access art, music, and the like, along with PE. At each grade level, there are teacher office hours or advisory blocks to make sure that kids are getting what they need that way, counselor sessions. And again, we are tracking, we're in contact with families that we know need it to make sure that, as we know, each day this situation changes and unfolds for us and for our families, and it does so regularly. So we want to make sure that we're keeping up and providing what is necessary for them. So, you know, we're not, as each day goes on, we get better at this, and we will continue to work at this to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our kids. But I think we have a lot to be proud of in how we prepared for and adapted to what the commissioner has asked us to do and to what we know our students need. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about any of that.
Any comments or questions?
No, it just sounds very good that we're able to have already done a lot of things he's already asked for. I mean, that just shows Auburn's a top-notch education system.
I would agree.
Great.
I just have one question, Dr. Chamberlain. It's only because I've heard multiple versions, I guess, of to the answers, and not from our district, but from all over. I was just talking to a friend from Worcester Tech yesterday, and of course we've got our own things going on at Bay Path. But could you just explain briefly how the credit, no credit piece works, and if at all it can have any effect on the grade that the child had when we left school back in March? Does that grade stay the same? Is there a rubric that we are working on with the credit, no credit, where maybe the enrichment work could be counted as points toward the grades back from March, where we left off, if that makes any sense? That's just been a question that's been going around.
Yeah. So the commissioner has, with many things, he's been really specific about certain things that he's wanted us to do. And with other things, there has been some, I don't know, I guess more leeway, I would say. But in regard to and you know, Dr. Brunel, correct me too, we've been in so many calls about these kind of things, but in relation to credit and no credit, he's really looking primarily for a level of engagement that makes sense and consideration of what's already been done, right? So there's no standard kind of hard and fast rubric that's going to give us the answer for this. But what he has really stressed is that most kids, the vast majority of kids, are going to be given credit for the work that they've done and proceed forward. And so that may require us in some circumstances to go above and beyond in pulling that child in, whether it be at the elementary level or the high school level, pulling them into some engagement with the work, and probably at the high school level to be a bit more specific about the type of assignments they need to engage with. But that effort falls on us, not necessarily the student, given the situation we're in. That we have to be going above and beyond, if they're not engaged, to find a way to engage them so that we can provide them with the credit they need to move forward. So again, there's no, you know, we had some teachers talking about, well, maybe they get, you know, they get a 0 for this level of participation, and then a 1, and then a 2, and some kind of a scale. The commissioner is not advocating for that.
Mhm.
He's advocating for us to be the facilitator to get the students engaged in what we believe to be valid, appropriate, and useful assignments and requirements. And from there, in most cases, to make that recommendation that they move forward with the credit they've received. So I don't know if that makes sense.
That does make sense. And as you said, sometimes engagement is difficult when certain children are in school, never mind when they're beyond our reach, that engagement becomes even more difficult. So I guess what I'm hearing is for those students, we could actually, without any official sliding scale, we could unofficially slide that scale down to meet their level of engagement, because sometimes a little bit of something is better than nothing, especially when it's a student who may be struggling for any number of reasons, correct?
It is. And what we've talked about is really individualizing our approach. So what is it, or how is it that the student will engage? And if it's not in the modality that the teacher has planned, maybe for the rest of the class, we find another way to make that happen.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that teachers are going above and beyond with reaching out to kids, whether that's modifying, and this is not for students, we're doing it for students on IEPs. I'm talking about students in the general population. You know, modifying the assignments, highlighting the ones that are most important. We're trying to provide choice in how kids can interact with the material in ways that are very student specific, so that we're not saying, well, if you don't do it this way, then you don't get the credit, right? Because this environment we've now been placed in, that's just not feasible for a lot of kids. So it is about really individualizing that approach so that we can make sure that kids succeed to the best way they can.
Okay.
Through the chair, I'm thrilled to hear that question from you, George, and also the response from Dr. Chamberlain, because I think, you know, some days these kids are just swimming through mud because it's a tough thing to be living through, and their parents are swimming through mud because they're trying to get, you know, really, you know, even just wrap your mind around, got to disinfect the groceries or whatever the drama of the day could be. So I certainly appreciate what our teachers are doing. I hope they do not think that it is going unseen or unnoticed by the school committee, but it's certainly comforting to hear as a parent and a school committee member that that's the approach. Not that I would expect anything less. But.
I will say too, just to tag on to that our support staff has been instrumental in all of this. So the teachers are working very hard, but we have really tapped a lot of support staff, and I'm sure you know, right? Sometimes it's the IA that they see on lunch duty that they really connect with. And we've tagged on to that, right? That, you know, I know when I was a principal, I would know, you know, oh, you know what? I see him talking to this particular IA all the time. Maybe if she were to call, that might work. So we are looking at this from every possible angle we can to keep the kids engaged.
Excellent. Great to hear.
Great.
Did anyone else have anything to add to that?
Yeah, through the chair, just more, I was on a call with, for the state, and I know there was a big question about English language learners, and I know, you know, we probably don't have as many as some of the other districts. Are we having any issues with that? Are they doing okay?
So I will tell you, another group of professionals within our district are our EL tutors. So they, from the start, it was, they were motivated and engaged to reach out to their kids. And much like students on IEPs, the state has asked us to provide a comparable level of support as these students would receive when they were in school. And so we have a pretty extensive document that they document all of their interactions, all the lessons that they do, all the small groups that they're working on. We have, in some cases, had called in interpreters to make sure that we could reach out to the families. There's a really cool system now that you can do this all over the phone. You can call in real time, you get an interpreter in the language that you need. And so we've used that a number of times to make sure that families understand what the requirements are and what they need. We have been using Google Translate, which the Department of Education has said that we can now readily do, as long as we, also attach the English version of whatever we sent in case something were ever done in a, not exactly what we were trying to say. But all of those things have really helped. And I will tell you that EL staff, along with the teachers, obviously, they're doing small groups, they're doing one-to-one groups, and we've had a lot of great participation.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great answers to those questions.
Hold on, through the chair, just one comment. I want to say my daughter who's in 4th grade, just the amount of interaction she's actually getting being at home. It's great. She has her lunch groups and special math groups. And there's, like Dot said, there's, so many other staff members just coming forward and going above and beyond to help the kids. And it's just a beautiful thing. So
Great.
It's great.
Great to hear.
Great.
Thank you.
I wish I joined in on my daughter's gym class yesterday. I think I would have gotten in shape.
Oh, Meg, I get stuck doing that every day.
Halfway through Miss Green's class, I was like, I really should have done this.
Not to worry. There's a district wellness challenge you're going to hear about tomorrow, so
Okay,
everyone can tune in.
That's right.
And hold on, one more comment through the chair. And I've noticed, I've listened in on all of her calls as well. And at the beginning or the end, there's always a little bit of small talk, and the teacher or the lunch group facilitator or whoever it is always asks the kids, personal question of how they're feeling and trying to get a gauge of how they're doing emotionally. So I feel like it's hard. It's been a very hard situation, but we're definitely, the staff is making the best of it and doing what they can to help.
Great.
That's awesome.
Great staff and great leadership. Thankful for that. Okay.
So on to professional development offerings. So I'm not sure how aware you are, but since the school closure, we've been offering, we've tried to offer a wide variety of self-paced professional development opportunities available to really all staff, teachers, instructional assistants, ABAs, secretaries, custodians, just to keep them kind of engaged in the learning process, and also for teachers, for their recertification, they are required to have 15 PDPs specifically around special education and 15 around how to support EL learners. And I will tell you that the support and the participation has been terrific by all staff members at varying levels. But we've been able to offer through WIDA, which is offers all of our EL testing and that kind of training. They have a number of self-paced classes that if you do a few of them, you'll get your 15 PDPs that you need for recertification. And we just have to set them up an account. So many people have gone through that. We have offered folks to do the Apple badging process, which there are 6 courses you take to kind of learn the ins and outs of the iPad, particularly around accessibility options that are available in an iPad. So when you're working with students with disabilities, how you can best use those, use the iPad with that. Many have participated in that. We've done several articles, one being mathematical language in the classroom, another one around how did you get to Harvard, that addresses some students with some pretty significant special needs that became Harvard, not only students, but professors. And I'm also leading a book study on a book around universal design for learning. And all of these, we have reflections that teachers fill out, and I use a simple Google form for that, or staff fills out. And I also had several people say, we need more around social emotional learning. So we've offered several courses and small videos and reflections around social emotional learning for kids, the impact of trauma on learning. And it's just gone really well. I send them out each Wednesday. Today, we also added an option for beginner sign language that they can take for free online. So all of these things have been at no cost. I've gotten great feedback from folks. When they complete, they send me their certificate of completion, and we're tracking all that for PDP points. Once complete with the book on universal design for learning and a couple of other options, they'll have their 15 PDPs if they so choose for special education as well. And so I think the fact that it's all been self-paced has been very positive, because people are jumping on at different times when they feel like now they might have some time to do some things. So yeah, a lot of great response, and it will continue. So far, so good.
Excellent.
Okay, we also wanted to share with you that we had several staff members, quite a few, asking if they could get into the buildings to get their, not only their personal belongings, but also some instructional materials now that we have received these new remote guidelines. So we conducted a survey of all staff to see what they might need for time if they were to get into the building, what would be convenient times for them to get in the building given their personal situations. And if during that time, if they could do a rudimentary kind of preparation to close up their room for the summer. So we got a lot of information at each school. Principals worked out convenient schedules for everyone to enter the buildings. Teachers have gone into buildings. They've retrieved instructional materials, as well as kind of closed up their class in a way that didn't take a ton of time. Certainly that always takes some time. But also now allows our custodians to get in and do a thorough cleaning of the buildings. They also, particularly at the elementary level and to a similar degree at the middle school, took student materials, their workbooks that they currently had, put them in, it looks like we have a visitor.
Yes, we do.
Dr. Brunel, can you see that?
I do now, yes.
Okay. So they prepared student materials for families to pick up. And those processes have already begun this week at Swanson Road, Bryn Mawr School, and Packagug, and will perhaps, I think, maybe next week or the week after at the middle school. So we're trying to support everyone. We're also providing other materials if family have asked for it, crayons, paper, pencils, if that was requested through the principal. So that's gone really well. The principals have done a terrific job in kind of coordinating all of that so that we, had safe distancing, and we were using all those safety precautions for anyone in the building or coming to the building. So we're in very good shape to that and appreciate everybody's support of that. And finally, I share with you about the CARES Act, which that is the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. This is a provision that's going to provide districts additional funding to address the impact that COVID-19 has had on all of us. And it's been calculated based in some part on the Title I funds that we received each year. And each district was going to receive about 80% of that. So we've been notified that we will receive $156,025 through the CARES Act. And it can be used for a variety of things. It's not limiting at all with how we can use that funding. It can be used for assessments, technology, mental health, summer learning, professional development. So certainly there'll be discussions around the best way to use that. And the one thing is that it's with Title I, we can't supplant, we have to supplement, right? But this money is not subject to that requirement. So there really is great flexibility with that and will offer us some relief budgetarily.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions for Dr. Chamberlain? Seeing none, thanks again, Dr. Chamberlain. Great report.
Thank you, everyone.
And we now move on to everyone's favorite pandemic time.
She doesn't get a single meeting without that intro.
Cecilia,
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Cecilia.
Hi. I've included for you a year-to-date budget report dated May 6th, 2020 for your review, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any comments, questions?
Okay, so moving on. Additionally, I have a budget transfer list, which includes transfers from within the same series, as well as some transfers between different series for your information, and looking for your approval for those as well. So I'd entertain a motion.
I would entertain that motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfers between the series as presented by the business manager.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Discussion?
Oh.
Roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway,
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington,
Yes.
and Mr. Scobie. Yes, there's a vote.
Thank you. And as we do each year, approaching the end of the school year, I'd like to request the permission of the school committee to allow me to make omnibus transfers pertaining to the FY20 appropriated budget. All the transfers will continue to be made with input from Dr. Brunel and the leadership team as we collaborate to meet the needs of our district while expending the funds that we've been entrusted in the most beneficial and cost-effective manner. So if approved, I will document the transfers and I will bring them forward at each of the next school committee meetings for the fiscal year. So I would ask for your permission for that.
I would entertain that motion.
I'll make
I'll make a motion to approve the granting of omnibus approval to make transfers through the closeout of FY 2020.
I'll second that.
All right, roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway,
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington,
Yes.
and Mr. Scobie. Yes, it is a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. I've also included in your packet for your information an updated listing of our revolving accounts dated May 5th, 2020. And I can answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions?
Well said.
Seeing none.
Okay. All right. Next, I have AA Transportation Contract Amendment. As promised at a previous meeting, I've included in your packet a copy of the contract amendment, which modifies our current contract with AA Transportation, which will presently end as of June 30th, 2020, as we have a new contract coming into play for the new school year. But I would ask for your approval of the contract as it's presented.
I would entertain that motion.
I'll make that motion to approve the amended AAA contract as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway,
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington,
Yes.
and Mr. Scobie. Yes, it is a vote.
Okay, and thank you. Lastly, just a reminder, since it's now May 13th, that the bus applications for the 2021 school year are due at Central Office, 5 West Street, prior to June 1st, 2020. We do, as I mentioned, I believe last meeting, we do have a locked mailbox at 5 West Street for your mailed or dropped off registrations and payments. So keep them coming. They've been coming, starting to increase in amounts. So hopefully we'll be getting more because as we get close to the June 1st deadline. So thank you. And that's my report for today. Thank you very much, everyone.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, and we do need an executive session.
We do.
So I would entertain that motion.
I will make that motion that we go into executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21A2, to conduct strategies for negotiations with union and non-union personnel, and per Chapter 30, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation.
I have a second.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway,
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington,
Yes.
and Mr. Scobie. Yes, it is a vote. Good afternoon, everyone.